Maylord her bride rejected for being too poor, until a lonely rancher made her his everything. Alina Petrov stood at the small bus station with a single suitcase at her feet. The suitcase was old, its corners worn down from years of use, but it held everything she owned. Inside were a few dresses, a pair of shoes, some photographs, and a letter that had brought her all this way. She adjusted her coat and looked around, trying not to show how nervous she felt. This town was nothing like her home. The air felt wider, the streets quieter, and the people seemed to move with purpose, as if everyone already knew where they belonged. She had traveled for weeks, crossing borders and oceans, holding on to one hope: that marriage would give her a fresh start. Back home, opportunities were rare. Her parents were gone, work barely paid enough to survive, and each year felt heavier than the last. When she heard about the marriage arrangement, it sounded like a chance to change her life. Not for luxury, but for stability, for safety, for a place where tomorrow did not feel uncertain. The man she was meant to meet had sent letters before. They were short and formal but polite. He wrote about wanting a wife who could keep a home and stand beside him. Alina answered honestly. She told him she was not rich, that she had no savings, only a willingness to work hard and be loyal. He did not object. His replies continued. That silence of rejection never came, and she took it as acceptance. Now she waited for him, watching every passing car. Her heart beat faster each time footsteps approached. She reminded herself to stand straight, to smile, to be grateful. This meeting mattered. Everything depended on it. Finally, a man stepped out of a dark car and scanned the station. He was well dressed, with polished shoes and a confident posture. When his eyes landed on Alina, his expression changed, not with relief but with hesitation. He walked toward her slowly, his gaze moving from her face to her suitcase, then to her shoes. "You are Alina?" he asked. "Yes," she replied softly. "I'm very glad to meet you." He nodded but did not return the smile. Instead, he gestured toward the car, signaling her to follow. The drive into town was quiet. Alina tried to make small conversation, asking about the weather, the journey, the area. His answers were short. He asked her questions too, but not about her interests or hopes. He asked about money, about what she owned, about what she could bring into a marriage. At first, Alina answered calmly. She explained that she had skills, not wealth. She could cook, clean, manage a household, and work outside if needed. She spoke of responsibility and loyalty. The man listened, his jaw tightening with each word. When they reached his home, he did not invite her inside right away. He stood near the door, arms crossed, looking at her as if weighing a purchase rather than meeting a person. "I expected more," he said plainly. Alina felt her chest tighten. "More?" she asked. "More resources, more security," he replied. "You look like someone who needs help, not someone who can support a proper household." She tried to explain again. She reminded him of the letters, of what she had shared before, but his mind seemed already made up. He shook his head. "This arrangement won't work," he said. "I need someone better prepared." The words hit harder than Alina expected, not because she had never been judged before, but because she had believed, just for a moment, that this time might be different. She stood silently, her hands gripping the strap of her suitcase. "So, what should I do now?" she asked quietly. He hesitated, then replied, "You'll need to find other arrangements. I can give you a small amount to help you get by, but I cannot continue this." He handed her some money, not meeting her eyes. To him, the matter was finished. Alina stepped away from the house with her suitcase dragging behind her. The street felt longer than before, each step heavier. People passed by, unaware of the small collapse happening inside her. She did not cry. She refused to. Tears would not solve anything. She found a bench near a closed shop and sat down. Her hands shook slightly as she counted the money he had given her. It was enough for a few days, maybe a week if she was careful. Not enough to return home, not enough to start over easily. As the sun lowered, the town grew quieter. Lights turned on in homes, families gathered inside, and Alina remained alone outside, unsure where she belonged. She thought of the long journey, the courage it took to leave everything behind, and the trust she had placed in words written on paper. She felt embarrassed, not because she was poor, but because someone had looked at her and decided that was all she was. Yet beneath the hurt something else stirred, a quiet strength. She had survived worse than this. She had crossed borders with nothing but hope. She would not disappear simply because one man failed to see her value. That night, Alina walked toward a small boarding house she had noticed earlier. The sign flickered, and the building looked old, but it was shelter. She paid for a single room and lay on the narrow bed, staring at the ceiling. Fear crept in slowly, but she did not let it take control. Tomorrow she would look for work. Tomorrow she would stand on her own. Rejection had brought her here, but it would not define her future. She closed her eyes, holding onto that thought, as the unfamiliar town settled into silence around her. Alina woke up early the next morning to the sound of footsteps in the hallway. The boarding house was already alive with quiet movement. Doors opened and closed, water ran in shared bathrooms, and muffled voices drifted through thin walls. She sat up slowly on the narrow bed, taking a moment to remember where she was. The room felt cold, unfamiliar, and small, but it was a roof over her head. She washed her face at the sink in the corner, looking at her reflection. Her eyes looked tired, but there was still determination in them. She tied her hair neatly and put on her cleanest dress. It was simple, but she made sure it was tidy. She reminded herself that today was about survival. There was no time for shame or fear. Downstairs, the woman who managed the boarding house watched Alina closely as she came down the stairs. The woman was older, with sharp eyes softened by years of observing people. "You staying long?" the woman asked. "I don't know yet," Alina replied honestly. "I'm looking for work." The woman nodded. "Plenty of work if you're not afraid of it. Try the diner near the main road. They always need help." Alina thanked her and stepped outside. The morning air was cool, and the streets were calmer than the day before. Shops were opening and workers were heading to their jobs. She walked with purpose, holding her bag close, stopping at every place that looked like it might need an extra pair of hands. At the diner, the owner listened to her quietly. Alina spoke clearly but humbly. She explained she could clean, wash dishes, serve tables, and learn quickly. The owner studied her for a moment, then pointed toward the kitchen. "You can start today," he said. "Pay is small, but it's honest." Relief washed over her, but she kept her voice steady. "Thank you, I won't disappoint you." The work was hard. The kitchen was hot and the hours felt long. Her hands grew sore from scrubbing dishes and her feet ached from standing. Still, Alina worked without complaint. She paid attention, moved quickly, and helped wherever she could. By the end of the day, the staff noticed her effort. That night, she returned to the boarding house exhausted but proud. She had earned her first small amount of money on her own in this town. It wasn't much, but it meant food, shelter, and another day to keep going. Days turned into weeks. Alina settled into a routine. She worked at the diner during the day and took small cleaning jobs in the evenings. Sometimes she helped older residents with errands or watched children for a few hours. She saved every coin she could, careful not to waste anything. Not everyone treated her kindly. Some people whispered about her background, about why she was alone, about the arrangement that had failed. A few looked at her with curiosity, others with judgment. Alina learned to keep her head down and her focus forward. She answered politely when spoken to, but she did not share her story unless asked directly. Loneliness crept in during quiet moments. At night, when the boarding house settled and the hallway lights dimmed, Alina missed familiar sounds from her past life. She missed having someone who cared whether she made it through the day. Still, she reminded herself that independence, though lonely, was better than false promises. One evening, after a long shift, she stopped by a small shop to buy bread. Outside, she noticed an elderly man struggling to lift a crate. Without thinking, she stepped forward and helped him carry it inside. He thanked her warmly, surprised by her kindness. "Most people walk past," he said. Alina smiled faintly. "Sometimes people just need a hand." Small moments like that slowly changed how some in the town saw her. She was quiet but dependable, reserved but kind. The gossip softened, replaced by nods and brief smiles. Still, uncertainty followed her everywhere. She had no long-term plan, no family to lean on. Some nights fear returned, whispering that one illness or mistake could take everything away. On those nights, she reminded herself of how far she had already come. One afternoon, while cleaning a room at the boarding house, the owner approached her. "You work hard," the woman said. "I've seen many come through here, not all last." Alina paused, unsure what to say. "There's a ranch a few miles outside town," the woman continued. "The owner needs help now and then, honest work, quiet place." Alina listened carefully. She had heard of the ranch but knew little about it. "If you're interested, I can pass along your name," the woman said. "Yes," Alina replied without hesitation. "I would appreciate that." That evening, Alina lay awake thinking about the possibility. Working outside town would mean longer days, but maybe more stability. The idea of open land and steady work felt comforting after weeks of uncertainty. The next morning, she received word that the ranch owner was willing to meet her. Alina felt nervous but hopeful. This time, she promised herself, she would expect nothing beyond fairness. As she prepared for the meeting, she thought about the rejection that had brought her here. It still hurt, but it no longer defined her. She was no longer waiting to be chosen. She was building something on her own, step by step. With her bag over her shoulder and her head held steady, Alina stepped out once more, ready to face whatever came next. Alina left town early in the morning. The road leading to the ranch stretched wide and quiet, lined with open land and low fences. The farther she walked, the more the noise of the town faded away. The air felt cleaner and the sky seemed larger. She adjusted the strap of her bag and kept moving forward, her thoughts steady but alert. She had been given simple directions. "You can't miss it," the boarding house owner had said. Big land, old house, long driveway. As Alina approached, she saw it, an aging farmhouse set back from the road, surrounded by fields that rolled gently into the distance. A few horses stood near a fence, and the sound of wind moving through grass filled the silence. She stopped at the gate, unsure for a moment. Then she gathered herself and walked up the driveway. Before she reached the house, a man stepped out from a nearby barn. He was tall, broad-shouldered, and moved with the calm strength of someone used to physical work. His hair showed signs of gray and his face carried lines shaped by sun and years, not bitterness. "You must be Alina," he said, wiping his hands on a cloth. "Yes, sir," she replied. "Thank you for meeting me." "I'm Samuel Carter," he said. "You can call me Samuel." His voice was steady, not rushed, not sharp. It put Alina slightly at ease. He did not stare at her clothes or her bag. Instead, he looked at her face as if trying to understand who she was. They walked together toward the house. Samuel asked where she was from, how long she had been in town, and what kind of work she had done. His questions were simple, and he listened to her answers without interrupting. Alina spoke honestly, as she always did. She explained that she had worked wherever she could and that she was not afraid of hard work. "I don't need much," she said. "Just fair work and fair pay." Samuel nodded. "That matters more than most things." He showed her around the ranch. There were fields to tend, animals to care for, fences that needed repair, and a house that had grown quiet over the years. Alina noticed how everything felt lived in but lonely. It was clear that one person had been carrying too much responsibility alone. "My wife passed some years back," Samuel said simply, as if explaining the weather. "Since then, it's just been me." Alina did not ask questions. She only nodded, respecting the silence that followed. They stopped near the barn and Samuel turned to her. "I can offer work," he said. "It won't be easy. Early mornings, long days. I won't promise more than that." "I don't need promises," Alina replied. "Only a chance." He studied her for a moment longer, then nodded. "You can start today if you like." Alina felt a quiet relief settle inside her. She thanked him, and he handed her a pair of gloves before showing her the first task. She worked carefully, paying attention to his instructions. Though she was new to ranch work, she did not complain or slow down. She asked questions when unsure and learned quickly. Samuel noticed. He did not praise her loudly, but he took note. As the days passed, Alina settled into a rhythm. She rose before the sun, helped prepare meals, cleaned, fed animals, and worked the land. The work was harder than anything she had done before, but it felt honest. At night, her body ached, but her mind felt calmer than it had in months. Samuel treated her with respect. He spoke clearly, never raising his voice. He paid her fairly and made sure she had what she needed. When he offered her a small room in the house to save her the long walk back to town, he did so without expectation or pressure. "You're welcome to stay," he said, "if that helps." "It does," Alina replied. "Thank you." Living in the house felt strange at first. It was quiet, almost too quiet. But over time, Alina brought small signs of life into it. She cooked meals regularly, cleaned forgotten corners, and opened windows that had long remained shut. She did not try to change things quickly. She simply cared for them. Samuel noticed the difference, though he did not say much. The house felt warmer, not brighter but steadier. They spoke mostly during meals or while working. Their conversations were simple, about the weather, the land, and daily tasks. Slowly, deeper topics surfaced. Alina spoke about her journey, her mistakes, and her hopes. Samuel spoke about loss, responsibility, and the quiet weight of loneliness. Neither rushed the other. Trust grew naturally, without force. One afternoon, while repairing a fence together, Samuel slipped and strained his leg. Alina reacted quickly, helping him sit and bringing water. She insisted he rest while she finished the work. Samuel protested at first but gave in. That evening, as Alina prepared dinner, Samuel watched her from the doorway. "You didn't have to stay late," he said. "I wanted to," she replied simply. That moment changed something between them. It was not dramatic, but it was real. From then on, Samuel began to rely on her, not out of weakness but out of mutual respect. Alina felt valued, not as someone to be rescued, but as someone who contributed. The ranch no longer felt like a place of silence. It felt like a place of shared effort. Alina sometimes thought about how close she had come to giving up. If she had let rejection harden her, she would never have walked this road. Now, standing under open skies, she felt something she had not felt in a long time: belonging. She did not know what the future held. She did not expect miracles, but for the first time she felt seen. And that, she realized, was everything. Time passed quietly on the ranch, marked not by dates but by routines. Alina learned the land in small details: the way the morning light touched the fields, the sound the animals made when they were hungry, the change in the wind before rain arrived. Each day followed a pattern, yet none felt empty. Work filled her hours and purpose filled her thoughts. Samuel continued to treat her with steady respect. He did not watch her closely or question her intentions. He trusted her to do her work, and she trusted him to be fair. That balance made everything easier. They worked side by side often, sometimes in silence, sometimes exchanging a few words. Neither felt the need to fill every quiet moment. As weeks turned into months, Alina became more confident in her work. Her hands grew stronger, her movements more sure. She learned how to tend the animals properly, how to fix small problems before they grew larger, and how to manage the household without being asked. She did not see these tasks as duties but as contributions. The ranch was no longer just a place where she worked. It felt like something she belonged to. Samuel noticed the changes, not only in the ranch but in himself. He found that he no longer dreaded coming into the house at the end of the day. Meals were no longer silent or rushed. There was warmth in simple things: fresh bread on the table, clean windows letting in light, quiet conversations after long days. One evening, as they sat outside watching the sky darken, Samuel spoke more openly than he ever had before. "I never thought I'd let someone back into my life this way," he said. "After my wife passed, I learned how to live alone. I thought that was enough." Elena listened carefully. She did not interrupt or rush him. "I wasn't looking for anything more," he continued. "But things change when you're not paying attention." Elena nodded. "Sometimes change happens slowly," she said. "So slowly you don't notice it until it's already there." He looked at her, thoughtful. "You're wise beyond what most people see." She smiled faintly. "I've had time to learn." Their connection deepened not through grand gestures, but through everyday trust. Samuel began asking for her thoughts on decisions about the ranch. He valued her opinion and listened when she spoke. Elena felt respected in a way she never had before. She was not being measured by what she lacked, but by what she gave. Still, Elena carried quiet fears. Her past rejection had left marks she could not fully erase. Some nights, she lay awake wondering if this life could disappear just as suddenly as the last promise had. She reminded herself not to expect too much to protect her heart. Samuel had his own doubts. He worried about burdening her, about misreading kindness as something more. He did not want to risk hurting her or himself. So they both moved carefully, aware of the growing bond but unwilling to rush it. The turning point came one afternoon when a strong storm rolled in unexpectedly. Heavy rain and wind damaged part of the fence near the far field. Samuel went out alone to inspect it. Elena noticed how long he was gone and felt uneasy. When she found him, he was struggling to keep his balance in the mud. Without hesitation, she helped him steady himself and guided him back toward the house. They were both soaked by the time they reached shelter. Inside, Elena helped him sit down and wrapped a blanket around his shoulders. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from fear of what could have happened. "You shouldn't have gone alone," she said quietly. Samuel looked at her, surprised by the worry in her voice. "I didn't want to trouble you." "You're not a trouble," she replied firmly. "You're not alone anymore." The words hung in the air between them. Samuel felt something shift inside him. For years he had carried responsibility by himself. Hearing those words made him realize how deeply Elena had become part of his life. After that day, things felt different. They did not speak openly about feelings right away, but their actions spoke clearly. Samuel made sure Elena never felt uncertain about her place on the ranch. Elena allowed herself to trust that she mattered. One evening, Samuel invited her to walk with him across the fields as the sun set. The sky was painted with soft colors, and the land felt peaceful. "Elena," he said slowly, "I want to be honest with you." She stopped walking and turned to face him, her heart steady but alert. "I care about you," he continued. "Not just as someone who helps here. You've become important to me. But I don't want you to feel trapped or pressured." Elena took a moment before answering. She searched his face, seeing sincerity, not demand. "I care about you too," she said, "but what matters most to me is respect and choice." Samuel nodded. "That's what I want too." From that moment, their relationship grew openly but gently. They spent more time together, shared more stories, and allowed affection to grow at its own pace. There was no rush to define anything. They were building trust, piece by piece. Elena felt something healing inside her. The fear of being judged for her past slowly faded. Samuel never asked her to be anything other than herself. He did not see her as someone to save or fix. He saw her as a partner in life. For Samuel, Elena brought light back into a life that had grown narrow. Her presence reminded him that companionship did not mean loss of independence but shared strength. As summer approached, the ranch flourished. Crops grew strong, animals thrived, and the house felt alive. Visitors noticed the change, though few understood its source. Alina no longer felt like a stranger. She felt rooted. One quiet night, sitting together on the porch, Samuel reached for her hand. Alina did not pull away. The gesture was simple, but it carried the weight of all they had built together. In that moment, both understood that what they had was real, not born from need or pity, but from choice, patience, and mutual care. And that made all the difference. The change between Alina and Samuel did not happen all at once. It settled slowly, like morning light spreading across the fields. After that quiet moment on the porch, nothing felt forced or rushed. They continued their routines, but something warm now lived beneath every ordinary task. Samuel became more open in small ways. He shared stories from his past, memories of his wife, and the life he once had. He spoke without sadness but with honesty. Alina listened carefully, never trying to replace what had been lost, only understanding it. She respected his history and the love he had known before. That respect made Samuel trust her even more. Alina, in turn, began to speak more freely about her own past. She talked about the rejection that had left her stranded, about the fear she carried during her first nights in town, and about how close she had come to giving up. She admitted that being judged for her lack of money had hurt deeply. Samuel listened quietly, his expression serious. "No one should be measured only by what they own," he said. "That tells you nothing about who they are." As the months passed, their bond grew stronger. They worked together easily, moving around each other without needing to speak. They laughed more often, usually at small things, a mistake in the kitchen, a stubborn animal, or a shared memory. The ranch felt full, not of noise, but of life. People from nearby farms began to notice. When they visited, they saw a home that felt cared for and balanced. Samuel no longer seemed distant, and Alina no longer seemed like someone passing through. She belonged. One evening, after a long day of work, Samuel asked Alina to sit with him at the kitchen table. The lamp cast a soft light over the room. He looked nervous, something Alina had rarely seen. "Alina," he said, folding his hands, "I've been thinking about our future. I don't want to imagine it without you. Not because you need to, but because you want to." The rejection, the fear, the work, and the trust she had built step by step. She thought about how Samuel had never tried to control her or define her worth. "Yes," she said quietly, "I choose this life. I choose you." He reached for her hand, and this time there was no doubt in the gesture. They decided on a simple marriage. No large gathering, no display meant to impress others. Just a small ceremony on the ranch, surrounded by open land and a few people who truly cared. Alina wore a modest dress, one she had chosen herself. Samuel stood beside her, steady and calm. As they spoke their vows, there were no dramatic words, only promises of honesty, respect, and shared effort. Those promises meant more to Alina than anything else. After the ceremony, life did not suddenly change. They still rose early, worked hard, and faced challenges. But now they faced them together. Decisions were shared. Burdens felt lighter. Alina became the heart of the home. She managed the household, supported the ranch work, and brought warmth into every corner. Samuel made sure she never felt uncertain about her place. He valued her opinions and treated her as an equal partner. Sometimes, Alina thought back to the man who had rejected her for being too poor. The memory no longer caused pain. Instead, it reminded her of how narrow some minds could be. If that rejection had not happened, she would never have found this life. Samuel often caught her smiling quietly and asked what she was thinking. "Just grateful," she would reply. Years passed. The ranch grew stronger. They improved the land together, made careful plans, and supported one another through hard seasons. There were losses and disappointments, but also deep satisfaction. Alina was no longer a woman trying to prove her worth. She was valued, loved, and trusted. She had become everything to Samuel not because she changed who she was, but because he finally saw her clearly. And Samuel was no longer lonely. He had found companionship built on patience and respect. Together, they built a life that was not perfect but real, and that was more than either of them had ever hoped for.